Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're listening to us from. Welcome to Footprints, a podcast that tells the stories of our elders and gleans the wisdom from their lives. Today, our special guest is Marilyn Skinner, and you are very welcome. We're in their beautiful home, and it's lovely to be here. So Marilyn, tell us a bit about yourself. Take us way back in time. Once upon a time, there was a little girl.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Well, I'm still trying to get my head around the fact that I'm now an elder.
I know, right?
I still think I'm the 18-year-old girl that married Gary Skinner almost 50 years ago. But I'm a simple Canadian pastor's daughter. My parents were pastors. My grandparents were pastors. I was born 69 years ago in a small community in Canada called Oshawa. I lived a pretty normal life as far as Canadians go. You know, I was raised by my grandmother. My grandmother lived with us. I had a very happy, pleasant childhood. The thing that I'm most grateful about my childhood is my parents, my grandmother, taught me about Jesus and taught me that the most important thing you can do with your life is give your life to Jesus, and He'll look after all the rest. I went to 3 different schools because my parents were pastors. They moved around quite a bit. 3 different schools in Canada. Interestingly, I was never a top student in school. I was average.
But what did you like? What subject did you like?
My favorite subjects were English and history. But math, back in the day when I went to school, you had to take all the subjects, whether you were good at them or not good at them. So I was not good in math, especially algebra and geometry, not good at all. But English and history, I really, really liked it. I started taking piano lessons when I was 3 years old. I actually started playing. The first time I ever played for a worship service in church was when I was 9.
Oh my goodness.
And I've been playing the keyboard in church ever since I was 9 years old. But when I was...
So was it in your... how did you... 3 years old? Was it in your house?
It was in our house, yeah. My parents had a piano, so they got me a teacher. And she taught me. I practiced. I think maybe I just had a gift. You know, I was a very shy girl. Very, very shy. I was an only child until I was 12, and that's when my next sister was born. And I took piano lessons for 5 years from the same teacher. And the only word I ever said to her was goodbye on the last day that I was there. But I loved music. I loved playing the piano. When I was 16 years old, I went on a rock band. It was a summer outreach in Canada. There was this evangelist. He had a big truck, the side wall folded down into a platform, and then he was putting together a rock band that would go to beaches, parks, tourist areas, and just sing about Jesus, and then he would preach. So he was a friend of my father's, and he knew I could play the keyboard, so he asked if I could go. I was the youngest on that team, but the guitar player on that team was actually Gary Skinner. He was in college by then, and what happened was we saw literally thousands of people. This was during the 1970s, during the drug era when drugs were just becoming popular in North America.
Yeah, hippie culture.
Oh, the hippie culture. I don't know if anybody's watched Jesus Revolution, the movie, but it was very similar to what it was like in the Jesus Revolution. And we saw literally thousands of young people come give their hearts to Jesus in those parks and tourist areas. And because it was so successful in the summer, this evangelist wanted to put together a full-time team. All the rest of the people were college students. They were about to graduate the next year, but I was only in, I guess you'd call it S2.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That
was young. So I went to my father and I told him, I said, Daddy, I've decided that I'm going to quit school and I'm going to go join a rock band and I'm going to go preach to the hippies and the prostitutes and the drug addicts. And my father was very, very wise. He said to me, Marilyn, that is so good. I'm so glad that you're going to go and you're going to serve Jesus to your generation. He said, but you cannot go until you present me with a high school graduation diploma. So I was like, God, how am I going to give my father a high school diploma? I still have 2 years left of high school. And I got thinking. And one day I was practicing the piano and I had actually taken classical piano lessons. And I remembered all these certificates that I had. And the certificate said University of Toronto. So without my father knowing, I took all of my certificates to my school. I went to the headmaster and I said, "Sir, I need to graduate from this school at the end of this year. Are these certificates worth anything towards a high school diploma?" And he came back to me about a month later and he said, "Yes, you have enough credits to graduate from high school next year." So I was in S3. I gave my father the high school graduation certificate and I went and joined this rock band when I was 17 years old.
That is so amazing. So you joined this rock band and?
We traveled all across Canada, all across America. In the summer months, we would go to outdoor venues. In the winter months, the fall, we would go to high schools and we would hold an assembly. Students would come and then we would rent the auditorium in the high school at night and they would come back and the auditoriums would be packed full of young people, and literally thousands of teenagers would get up out of their seats, run to the front of that packed gymnasium, fall on their knees and give their hearts to Jesus. It was the most rewarding thing that we've ever done. And you know, the interesting thing is we traveled in this big truck. Back then, there were no laws. We didn't have a bus or a fancy automobile to get us around. The driver sat in the front with his wife, and all of the band sat in the back of this literally lorry. And that's how we traveled from place to place. We would sleep in church basements. We all carried sleeping bags with us. So for 2 years, we slept on floors in church basements. And, you know, we learned a lot of lessons about traveling when we were back there. But while we were on that team, that's when Gary came to me one night. I'm sure he has his version of the story, but I have my version of the story. He came to me one night, yes, and he said, "Marilyn, I love you." And do you know what I said? Get behind me, say, "Oh,
my Jesus, girl.
Oh, my Jesus, girl." I said, "You will not distract me from my call, from my destiny, from my God's destiny," because, you know, he had long hair. Everywhere we went, all the girls would be like, "Oh," and I'm like, "I'm not going to be another one of these statistics." And he was like, "No, I wouldn't say that. I'd never had a boyfriend before. Literally, I'd never had a boyfriend before." He said, "No, we're going away for our break. I want you to go and pray about it because I really feel that you're the one for me." So I went away for my break. He went away for his break, and he can tell you what happened on his break. But during my break, I really felt God say to me, "You are going to help this man be everything that I want him to be."
Wow, that's powerful.
So it wasn't like it was like love at first sight. It wasn't. It was like it was a God-ordained destiny for the two of us to come together. So I brought him home to meet my parents Christmas. I had just turned 18. I just, like 10 days earlier, I'd had my 18th birthday. He came home to meet my parents, and the first thing he asked them was if he could marry me. My father almost had a heart attack. But he looked at him and he said, "Oh, and when were you wanting this event to be?" And Gary said, "Oh, June." That was 6 months later. My dad said, "Oh, no, June is too close. You're going to have to wait at least a year and a half." And so we had decided whatever my parents said, that's what we were going to do. So we said, "Okay, we'll wait a year and a half." And about 3 weeks later, my father came to us and he said, pulled out his calendar. And he said, "June 1st sounds like a pretty good day to me." And Gary said, "You mean June 1st next year?" And my dad said, "No, June 1st this year." He said, "God woke me up in the middle of the night and he told me, let her marry him. He's a good man." So 6 months later, we were married. I was 18 years old and we've been making sweet music ever since.
Wow. So you marry and then?
We kept traveling with this rock band, sleeping in church basements on the floor. And then we went, after maybe a year, God led us to become youth pastors in a small church in Canada. It was quite interesting because we were in Florida and a very influential church came to Gary and asked him, said, "We want you to come and be our youth pastor. We're going to give you a car. We're going to give you a house with a swimming pool, and your wife can do the worship here. We're going to give you a good salary." About 2 weeks later, another man in Canada gave Gary the same offer, only no swimming pool, no car, no nice house, very little salary. But we really felt God said, "Don't go to Florida. I want you to go to that small church in Canada and become youth pastors." And so we went there. We were youth pastors for 2 years. They do events for the teenagers and look after all the teenagers, young adults in the church. So there's maybe about 40 of them. And then we also did worship. We led all the worship at that church.
Okay.
Then we moved to another small community, a farming community, to be the main pastors. There were 5,000 people that lived in the community. They were all farmers, pig farmers, chicken farmers, beef farmers, dairy farmers. And we were there for about 2.5 years when we really felt God called us to go to Zambia as missionaries. So we moved to Zambia in 1979, and we were there for 4 years.
Wow. What did you do in Zambia?
Again, we pastored 2 churches, one in the capital city and one in the Copper Belt called Kitwe. And it was when we were in Zambia that God really spoke to Gary, and I'll let him tell that story, to come to Uganda.
Had you known about Uganda? Like, what did you think?
I hadn't known very much about Uganda. Idi Amin was still in power then. Well, he was just being chased out. And I remember watching a documentary about, it was actually Clock Tower, and there were some nuns that were held up at Clock Tower and they were shot to death. That's about the only thing I knew about Uganda. Idi Amin, bloodshed, murder. And I have to admit, I did not want to come to Uganda. I didn't want to come to Uganda. I remember praying, saying, God, no, I don't want to do this. And I had a revelation. I was actually reading in Luke. The Message Bible puts it very nicely. If you want to be my disciple, I realized at that moment there's a difference between being a disciple of Jesus and being a follower of Jesus. To be a follower, all you have to do is believe in your heart and confess with your mouth, and you're a follower of Jesus, right? But to be a disciple, this is what Jesus says in Luke. You have to take the things that are dearest and best to you, whether plans or people, and kiss them goodbye.
Really?
In the King James Version, it says, you cannot be my disciple unless you are willing to die to yourself, take up your cross every day, and actually, this is what it says in the King James Version, hate your mother, father, your brother, your sisters, your own children, even one's own life. And I remember saying, God, what kind of God are you that could ever ask me to hate my own children? And as I, researched it, I realized he didn't actually mean hate. He actually meant you have to come to the place in your life, if you're a disciple, where you love Jesus far more than all of these things. He's the most important thing in your life. So it was at that time that I think I transitioned from being a follower of Jesus to being a disciple of Jesus. And I said, okay, Lord, my life is yours. It's not mine. It's no longer I that lives, but it's you that lives in me. So I am willing to take up my cross every day and follow you. That's a difficult decision to come to. It's painful and it's very costly. It costs you everything.
Yeah, tell us about the cost when you say that.
It means dying to your own ambitions for your life. It means dying to the plans that you had for your life. It means dying to relationships. You have to say goodbye to your family. The costs that Gary and I paid for being here in Uganda was very expensive. Not just because Uganda was very dangerous, like there's many stories, and I can go into those later, how we could have lost our own life, but for God. But the cost to our own children, bringing your children to a place where people are being murdered every day. Because we used to drive around dead bodies all the time. I mean,
and this is Kampala. In case people think you're talking about some far away.
Kampala.
Yeah.
We used to, the capital city. I mean, we used to drive down the main road, Kampala Road. There were hardly any cars.
Yes.
But there were days when, people were driving down with machine guns and opening the windows and just opening fire. They would be throwing grenades into the bus park. It was like unbelievable. We heard gunfire every single night. Across the city, across the street, sometimes right in our own front yard. So the cost to your children, putting them in a traumatic situation like that, is very, very difficult.
And I think people who didn't grow up in a Uganda like that don't understand.
They have no idea.
What you're saying.
The thing is this. The majority of Uganda do not remember those days of Uganda because 80% of the population is under
15.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15.
So they have no idea. They see the peace and the prosperity and the good roads and the development and the economy being good. When we first moved to Uganda, you could not buy toilet paper here. Banana leaves worked very good.
Yes. It's good to find other ways. Yeah.
Bread was very hard to get. Sugar, people would line up to get a kilo.
I was one of those. My siblings and I used to go and line up. So yes, we grew up in that Uganda where every night, you hear the gunfire around you. I do understand. And that's us as Ugandans. So you can imagine a foreigner experiencing this.
I mean, there was military curfew for over a year. You had to be in your house by 7 o'clock at night, and you could not go out till 7 in the morning, or you'd be shot dead in the streets. I know people that went into labor and they were shot on the streets because they were trying to get to the hospital. So this generation needs to be very grateful for the Uganda that they are being raised in today, you know. So the cost to putting your children in a traumatic situation like that, you know, we'd only been here. We'd only been here a few months, literally a few months, 3 months, I think. And Gary was in Kenya. I was all alone with the kids. And we had no security bars on our house. And around 11 o'clock at night, a gang of men came and tried to break in. And we had a man, he had a bow and arrow that would walk around our house. And around 11, he came to my house and he says, "Mommy, they cut your electricity." And, you know, the gangs used to do that back then. They just cut electricity in whole areas of the city, and then they'd go from house to house. And so I didn't really get too worried because it used to happen all the time. So then about 30 minutes later, he came back and he said, "Mommy, they've come and there's many of them." So I told him to run, jump the fence. He did. I got our 3 kids. I hid them underneath my bed, and I dragged the furniture in front of the door and barricaded myself in the bedroom. And for 3 hours, I could hear those men banging on the door, trying to break that door down, saying, "You open, we're going to kill you, we're going to rape you." And they were shooting, and, you know, the bullets were whizzing over the roof. It sounded like popcorn, the old-fashioned way. That's what everybody used to call gunfire, popcorn about then. And, you know, I'm not going to tell you I wasn't afraid. I was terrified. I had only one thing on my mind. I cannot wait for the man of God to get home. And when he gets home, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind.
Yes.
And I had this scene all played out in front of me, how Gary would come in, drive the car down the driveway, roll the window down, and expect me to go out and give him a nice kiss. But I wasn't going to do that. I was going to go out with my hands on my hips and say, "Gary, what kind of a crazy man could bring a wife and 3 children to a place like this? You need your head read. They have a word for you here in Uganda. It's called mulalu. And they also have a place where you could go and reside. It's called Bitabika."
This is.
But you know, I heard a voice, Jackie. And that voice said, "Get up, girl. Get up. I didn't bring you to Uganda to be paralyzed by fear. I brought you here for a purpose." And I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice. Was my fear going to be stronger than my faith? Or was my faith going to be stronger than my fear? That night before I went to bed, I was reading in my Bible, and it wasn't just some place that I'd open, "Oh, God, speak to me, Holy Spirit, through it." It was my systematic Bible reading, and it was in Isaiah. Do you know what I read? I read, "Behold, they shall surely gather together against you, but not by me. And whoever gathers together against you will fall for my name's sake, because I am the one who has made the weapon, and no weapon that is formed against you will prosper." That's what I read before I went to bed. And so I thought, God, this is your word to me. And if you can keep those 25 men out of this house, there's nothing in this world that you cannot do. So I chose to believe that because God chased those men away, they gave up after 3 hours. There's nothing in this world that he cannot choose, that he cannot do. So I chose to have faith instead of fear. And you know, faith requires a choice. Some people run to these prophets and wherever, "Oh, lay your hands on me and give me the gift of faith." The truth of the matter is faith is actually a choice that you must make. And when you make that choice, you pay the price and you step out. Faith is like standing in front of Goliath with only a stone and a slingshot. You think you need a bazooka, but he gives you a stone and a slingshot.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, I'll take you back a little bit to that first night in Uganda. We arrived, the missionaries dropped us off in our house, in the house they found for us in Kansanga. It was an empty house. The grass was up to my waist. We had no food, nothing. They got back in their car and went back to Nairobi. And Gary went down to the Kansanga market to try to buy us just some cabbage, some tomatoes. I didn't want him to know that I was traumatized. So I was putting on a big front in front of him that everything was really, really cool. But it wasn't. It wasn't. And as soon as he left, I fell to the floor. And I started crying and said, "Oh God, I cannot make it in this place. I can't make it. I feel like you've sentenced me to prison and I'm not going to survive." Because that's how bad it was. I mean, the drive from the border up to here, people didn't have shoes. The desperation, the look of despair, the hopelessness in their eyes was haunting. I mean, it was terrible. And I said, "I cannot make it without you." And I felt the Holy Spirit whisper in my ear and say, Marilyn, go get your gift. When we left Canada, a woman came to the airport and she gave me a gift. I never unwrapped it. I put it in my suitcase. So I went to my suitcase and I got my gift and I opened it and it was a plaque. And that plaque said, the will of God will never lead you where the grace of God cannot keep you. And I felt that was Jesus' personal little love letter to me that, hey, you think you're not going to make it in this place, but hey, my grace is more than enough and it's more than sufficient and you will make it, not in your own strength, but in my strength. You know, I have often thought about that verse, his strength is made perfect in your weakness. And I was thinking the other day, how can Jesus' strength be perfected through weakness? Right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what? In my weakness, his strength is perfected because he shows off, because he comes through. So I was weak. We were weak through many situations that we went through, but his strength was perfected and his glory actually has been shown to the whole world.
Amazing. So enter KPC. Did you how did that start?
Well, I'll let Gary tell the story about how God led him to start the church, but we felt led to start a church downtown, an English-speaking church, interestingly enough, in the heart of the city. And God gave him a word through that church. I'll touch the city. I'll touch the nation. So we began looking for venues when we arrived in 1983. And, places were destroyed. We went to what is now the Sheraton Hotels. And I'm telling you, we went in, I forget what it was called, the Apollo Hotel or something. There was a grand piano with the legs cut off lying in the entranceway. We went up to what is now the dining room, and there was like poo-poo all over the floor. It was awful, but there was no way that was going to work. Now current Serena Hotel was being used as a detention center for political prisoners. So we went to the Imperial Hotel, and we really felt that's where God wanted us to start. So we started on Easter Sunday with 75 people. There were no light bulbs in the building. There was no light bulbs. There was electrical sockets hanging on, but no light bulbs. So we had to bring light bulbs, screw them in. There were no chairs. We had to air freight 400 chairs in from London and chain them to the water pipes so that people wouldn't steal them during the week. But that very first Sunday, 75 people showed up. And I like to say the most important person of all showed up, Jackie. We know who that is. Jesus. And when Jesus shows up, everything changes. People change, cities change, nations change. And literally over the past 41 years, Gary and I have seen the transformation of probably hundreds of thousands of people.
What I say is that you cannot tell the story of church in Uganda without this amazing story. 41 years.
41, yeah.
Wow.
But we've also seen the transformation of an entire nation.
Yes, indeed. And beyond.
And beyond.
And beyond.
So after 2 years, we outgrew the Imperial Hotel. And God led us to the Norman Cinema, the now current downtown. And I'll never forget walking in for the first time. The roof leaked so badly that when it rained, you needed an umbrella to stay dry. The theater screen was all ripped and torn. Out of the 1,500 seats, maybe 100 worked. They were all broken. And as we walked through the side doors, Gary cried out, "Oh God, what a waste of a beautiful building." And he had a vision. He didn't see it the way it was. He saw it the way it could be. Isn't that just like Jesus?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
When he looks at us, he doesn't see us the way we are. He sees us the way we could be. And that's actually what faith is, not seeing things the way they are, but seeing them the way they could be. He saw it renovated, full of light, jam-packed full of people, young people, with their hands raised, and they were worshiping Jesus. And we knew that that was the building God wanted us to have. But we had a problem. Because the Civil War was still going on in the country at the time, and when the government would catch the rebels, they would bring them to that building. Many were tortured and even killed in that building. There was no way we were going to get that building. So we did the only thing we knew what to do. We began to pray. And when you call on Jesus, all things are possible. We prayed 1 month, nothing happened. 6 months, nothing happened. Actually, things got worse. The political situation got worse and worse and worse. Obote was overthrown. Tito Okello came in, as that was very, very bad days during that time. After 1 year, the American ambassador came to our home and he said to Gary, "Mr. Skinner, I cannot tell you that you need to leave Uganda, but you need to seriously ask yourself, why are you here?" He said, "I've sent my team out. I've sent my family out." He said, "I'm only remaining with Marines to guard me. Gary, do you have Marines to guard you?" And I was standing behind Gary saying, "Yes, thank you, Jesus. You have sent a prophet to our house today. Let us listen to him." Because when I was 15 and I'd made that decision to be a disciple of Jesus, we got down on our knees and we prayed and we said, "Lord, if you want us to leave, we will leave. But if you want us to stay, we will stay." And God spoke again. I didn't like his answer.
Yeah.
He said, "Don't go. Go and ask to use that building for 2 weeks. When you go in, you won't go out." So we went to the army and we asked if we could use the building for 2 weeks for special meetings. We told them we'd clean it and we'd paint it. And I think the idea of free paint appealed to them. So they told us we could use that building for 2 weeks. In the middle of 2 weeks of special meetings, when hundreds of people were coming and finding new freedom in Jesus Christ, Yoweri Museveni marched into Kampala, overthrew the government, leaving us in that building. All the soldiers that had occupied it fled from that building. We have never left since January 1986. God miraculously gave us that building. And every Sunday we see with our eyes what Gary saw in his vision. Jam-packed, full of light. Young people, old people, children, parents, families standing with their hands raised, worshiping the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Not just once, but many times. And the campuses have been multiplied many, many times over. And I say to myself as I look back on my life, I was reading in Luke chapter 6, there's trouble ahead when you think you've made it.
Mm-hmm.
What you have is all you'll ever get. And I've often thought to myself, if we had left with 200 people in 1986 because we thought we'd made it, what we had would have been all we'd ever got. But you know what? We decided to persevere.
Yeah.
We decided to keep trusting Jesus. We decided to keep going on. Jackie, I don't want written on my tombstone, quitter.
Yeah.
Right?
I know, here lies a woman who...
She stayed at her post. That's what I want written up my tombstone. And look what I would have missed. Look what I would have missed. The joy of seeing lives transformed. The joy of seeing a nation transformed. The Uganda that people come to today is not the Uganda that we moved to. I recently read that Uganda is one of the top destinations for people to come in all of the world. Not just for the beauty of nature, but for the beauty of the people.
Yeah. And who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Because you know what? Jesus despises in taking the things that everybody else thinks are nothing. The things that are broken, the things that are trash, the things that are ruined. He delights in putting them back together again and then putting them on display. Showing his strength through those weak things, and he gets all the glory. Because honestly, nobody but God could have transformed this nation the way that I witnessed with my own eyes.
Yeah. Wow. This story just gives me goosebumps, but also I feel like I needed to hear this story so that I don't give up.
Yeah.
And so that the many that will listen to this will learn to stay at their posts, because it's not easy. It's, it's 40 years and people, I know that through this podcast, we can't tell day by day, like, okay, tell me what happened in day 1 and day 2 and day 3. But the arc of it is so beautiful. And I hope it will encourage people who are almost giving up to stay.
I hope so.
To stay.
And the thing that I want to leave with the audience today is this. His grace is still greater.
Yeah.
It's still greater than what it was on Calvary, than what it was for every situation that I've been through. His love is still everlasting. He loves you no matter what you've done, no matter what you haven't done. I've realized there's nothing in this world you can do to deserve God's love.
Not at all.
No good.
Yeah.
But there's also no evil you can ever do to stop God from loving you. You can't do anything to earn his love, and you can't do anything to stop him from loving you. His love is still everlasting. And the other thing is his mercies are still new every morning.
Yeah.
Every morning.
Yes, every
Not just,
literal.
so we can't rely on yesterday's mercies. His mercies are still new every morning.
Serve mawolu. I don't know if you know that's Uganda. It's food that has stayed over. He does not serve mawolu.
His mercies are still new every morning. His blood has never lost its power. And his faithfulness is still tried and true and good.
Yeah.
He's been good to me, Jackie. And he has been good to you. And he wants to be good to every listener.
Yes, indeed. So now, 40 years. And of course, in your mind, I hope that one day we will leave this.
Oh, for sure.
So how did, tell us that story. Did you close your eyes and say, we'll get to it when we get there, or did you start to plan?
Started to plan. You know what? We started planning for this moment when our feet hit the soil of Uganda in 1983. Because the whole purpose of our life has been to multiply our life and the lives of others, right? First of all, you model. John Maxwell put it so good. You model what it really is to be a follower of Jesus, to be a disciple. And then you motivate people with your words, with your works, with your actions. And then you mentor them. You can model and you can motivate hundreds of thousands of people. But you can't mentor hundreds of thousands of people. You can only mentor a few. So we started taking just a few. The one. I could name them, but I'm not going to name them. I don't want to leave people out.
Yes.
Working with, maybe 10, 12 people, mentoring them, pouring our lives into them so that they in turn would be able to pick up the mantle one day and do even greater things than what we do. So our whole purpose, the whole reason that we came here was so that we could do that. So we started planning in 1983 for that.
Wow.
But more strategically, probably in the last 5 years, identifying a team, working with them, helping them, so that when the transition actually happened on February 3rd last year, we were ready for it.
You were ready. How did you ready yourself?
Gary and I still have a lot of energy. He's a visionary. He will never stop being a visionary, and I don't want him to stop being a visionary. But the truth of the matter is he's no longer the vision bearer for Watoto Ministries. Julius is now the vision bearer for Watoto Ministries. So we're now in the process of saying, okay, God, give us a new vision.
Yes.
I said,
For this season.
Yes. I said, I think we were pastors of a local church, and we served a local church for 41 years here in Uganda. Now it's probably time to step up and serve the church at large around the world. I think we did a very good job, and I say this humbly, of preparing the people we handed over to. I'm not so sure we did such a good job of preparing ourselves, because one service and then all of a sudden we sat in our living room and now what are we supposed to do? Because you have to be careful. You can't be leading from behind. Either you're transitioning or you're not transitioning, right?
What makes that important?
I want to be careful here, but
Yeah.
there's a country in the world where they had a president for a long time. And then because of politics, he stepped out for a while, but he was still controlling things from behind. But he's now back to being the president again.
And it happens in business.
It happens all over the place. And that's not a true transition. Either you prepare somebody and you let them fly their own plane, drive their own car, make their own decisions, make their own mistakes, or else you try to twist it.
I know.
And that doesn't work. You can always be a father, a grandfather, a counsel. And the team at Watoto know we are a phone call away. They can phone us anytime they want, and we are there to support and to serve in whatever way they seem necessary, but it cannot be to control. So it's taken a little bit of...
But Marilyn, and the reason I'm pressing that a bit is it's maybe easier said than done, partly because you grew this baby. All the feelings, all the...
For sure.
Yeah, so what is that process to graciously let that go?
Well, I think you said the word. It's a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. And just like faith is a choice, you have to choose to do the right thing all the time. You have to choose to, I'm not going to pick up the phone and tell them what to do. I think this is the wrong thing that they're doing. You know what I mean? You have to choose to believe that Watoto is not Gary's and mine.
Yeah.
It's not. The church is not ours. The church is Jesus' church, and Jesus loves that church more than we do. And we have to entrust that church into his care and his hands. And we know that we made the right decision with the people that we chose. And so we have to entrust them as well. So I pray for them every day. This is what I pray for the leadership of Watoto. Give them wise minds.
Yeah.
Give them understanding hearts. Give them discerning spirits. And give them righteous and just choices. And if the leadership can do that, and I can do my part by upholding them in prayer for those 4 things, I'm telling you, the sky is the limit to where God can take this. But you do have to learn. It's like, how old are your children, Jackie?
20 and 22.
Have they all left home?
Yes, they have.
Yeah, you have to let them go. You can no longer be telling your children, when you let them go and they leave the nest and they jump out of the nest, you have to let them fly on their own. And you can't be always telling them what they should do. Instead, you sit back, you pray, and you let them know, I am here for you. I am so proud of you. You're doing a good job. And they have to have the confidence that, you know what? Even if you make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. You're there to help them.
Yes.
So we're excited about what God has for us in the future. We're still working out what that will be. We started out stewarding breadcrumbs. Okay? That's how Gary and I started in Uganda, stewarding a breadcrumb. And that breadcrumb grew into a loaf of bread. And before we knew it, we had a whole sack of bread. And after 41 years, we didn't just have a sack of bread. We had a shipping load container full of flour.
Yeah.
Okay? We handed over a shipping load full of flour. Those people can bake whatever they want with that shipping load full of flour. But we are back to stewarding breadcrumbs. And never despise a breadcrumb.
Not at all.
Never despise a mustard seed. It looks small in your hand, but it's amazing what God can do with a breadcrumb. I've told people, I am no longer looking for a platform. I don't need a platform. I'm looking for an open door. And the other side of that open door is my platform.
Yeah.
So today, this podcast is my platform.
Amen. Amen to that. And as we end, I should have asked this a few minutes ago, but you helped build the music ministry at Watoto. What lessons have you gleaned from that as you did that, as you played faithfully, because often we see the singers, often you see everybody, but faithfully playing well. Not just playing, but playing well. What was that to build that, or what lessons did that teach you also?
Well, to play well requires skill and it requires discipline, okay? Nobody who is skilled at anything, whether you're a sports player or a musician, lacks discipline. You have to have discipline. So a lesson that I learned was this: if I'm going to raise up other people to do what I do, and it's a testimony to itself. I haven't played the keyboard in 5 years.
Yeah.
7 years, because I poured myself into helping others take the skill that I had and teach them the principles of discipline so that they could even excel.
Yeah.
If they asked me to go back and play the keyboard today, I wouldn't be able to play nearly as good as any of them.
Yes.
So, when you have a gift, you should never hold on to it and keep it to yourself. I think that's the lesson I
Give
got.
your gift away.
Because when you hold on to it and keep it to yourself, it will never outlive you. When you die, your gift dies with you. But if you can take the gift that you have, whether it's music, sports, cooking, it doesn't matter what that gift may be, and you can invest that gift into the lives of others, that gift will outlive you for generations to come. As long as you taught those people, don't hold on to this gift that you have, pass it on to other people.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful place to land. Give the gift away, whatever it is. Stay at your post. Faith is a choice. So many beautiful things. And thank you for the beautiful legacy you and Gary have built. Like I said, I don't think the story of the church in Uganda can ever be told without a chapter, maybe several, on Watoto Ministries. And we thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you for being our guest today. It's been amazing. Is there one last thing you want to say? One last thing?
Jesus never fails. I'll leave it at that.
Stop and think about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie.